In the long annals of maritime history, few mysteries have gripped the imagination quite like that of the Mary Celeste. On December the 4th, 1872, a merchant brigantine was found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean in seemingly perfect sailing condition. Her cargo was intact, her sails still set, and provisions for months remain untouched. There was one haunting detail. Not a single member of her crew was anywhere to be found. The Mary Celeste departed New York City just weeks earlier, bound for Genoa in Italy, with a seasoned captain, a trusted crew, and the captain's own wife and young daughter aboard. Yet when she was discovered by another vessel, the ship's lifeboat was gone. The logbook's final entry was oddly mundane, and no sign of violence or catastrophe could be found. Over the years, theories have ranged from the plausible to the fantastical, from sudden storms and rogue waves, to mutiny, piracy, and even supernatural intervention. Some have claimed foul play, others whispers about a crew driven mad by fumes. Much like unsolved mysteries of modern times, the Mary Celeste has taken on a life of its own, becoming part of nautical folklore, a ghost ship drifting through the pages of history, a crew lost to time. In this investigation, we'll retrace the final known movements of the vessel, examine the facts as they stand, and explore the most enduring theories, weighing the evidence for and against each one, before arriving at the most likely explanation for one of the ocean's greatest enigmas. Welcome to Echoes of the Unknown, where we dive deep into the mysteries, the unexplained, and the unbelievable. From strange disappearances to chilling true crime, we uncover the stories that leave more questions than answers. If you love exploring the dark corners of reality, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode. The unknown is calling. Are you ready to listen? The Mary Celeste was a two-masted brigantine built in Nova Scotia in 1861, originally christened the Amazon. In her early years, the vessel seemed to carry an unlucky streak. She endured collisions, ran aground, and even suffered the sudden death of her first captain on her maiden voyage. Despite this, she remained seaworthy and changed hands multiple times before ending up in the possession of a group of Boston-based investors. One of those investors was Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs, a man in his late 30s with a sterling reputation among his fellow mariners. Briggs was not just a captain, but also a family man, deeply religious and respected for his caution at sea. By all accounts, he was not prone to reckless risks or superstitions. When he took command of the Mary Celeste, he had every reason to believe that this voyage would be a straightforward commercial run. In the autumn of 1872, the ship was prepared for what should have been an ordinary transatlantic crossing. Her cargo, 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, highly flammable but a common product in shipping at the time. The journey was set from New York Harbor to the port of Genoa, Italy, where the alcohol would be delivered to waiting buyers. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste left New York with a complement of 10 people. Captain Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and a crew of 7 sailors, all personally selected by Briggs for their competence and their character. The crew was multinational but united by professional discipline, and records suggest there was no known conflict or tension before departure. In the early days of the voyage, the ship made steady progress. Weather reports from the period, later compiled during investigations, suggested that the Mary Celeste faced occasional rough seas and strong winds, but nothing that would be considered out of the ordinary for a ship of her build and size. Briggs' log entries, recovered after her discovery, paint a picture of routine sailing. The final entry in the captain's log was dated November 25th, placing the ship just 6 miles off the island of Santa Maria in the Azores, hundreds of miles from Genoa, and on a good heading. There was no hint of trouble, no mention of sickness, mutiny, or mechanical problems. It was the kind of log entry any captain would hope to make on a smooth voyage. And then, silence. No more entries, no more sightings. Until the morning of December 4th, 1872, when the British brig de Gracia, under the command of Captain David Morehouse, spotted a vessel drifting aimlessly about 400 miles east of the Azores. At first they assumed it was simply another merchant ship on its route. but as they drew closer, they noticed something strange. Mary Celeste's path was erratic, the sails partially set, flapping in the wind, as though no one had tended them for days. Repeated hails were met with nothing but the sound of the sea. First mate led a boarding party. They found its haunted maritime history ever since. The ship was in good condition, not pristine, but entirely seaworthy. The hull was intact, the cargo untouched, except for a few barrels that seemed to have leaked. There was food and water to last 6 months, and the captain's cabin was orderly. The personal effects suggested a hasty departure. A lifeboat was missing, along with navigational equipment and the ship's papers. There was no sign of violence, no struggle, no blood, no damage that could suggest the ship had been through a catastrophic storm. As if the crew had simply walked off the vessel in the middle of a calm day and vanished. The question that has puzzled historians, sailors, and storytellers for over 150 years remains. Why would 10 people, including the captain's wife and young daughter, abandon a perfectly serviceable ship in the middle of the Atlantic? In the afternoon of December the 4th, 1872, the Canadian brig de Gracia, captained by David Morehouse, was sailing through the North Atlantic, roughly halfway between the Azores and the coast of Portugal. At around 1 p.m, the lookout spotted a vessel drifting erratically about 6 miles away. The ship's unsteady course and the odd state of her sails immediately raised suspicions. As de Gracia approached, Morehouse could see there was no one visible on the deck. His repeated signals went unanswered. Concerned, he dispatched First Mate Oliver Devoe and Second Mate John Wright in a small boat to investigate. When the men boarded the drifting ship, they identified her as the Mary Celeste by the name on the stern. The scene they encountered was unsettling. The sails were partially set, but in poor condition, some even missing. Much of the rigging hung loose and damaged. The fore and lazarette hatch covers lay open on deck, while the main hatch was secured. The ship's lone lifeboat, a small yawl that had been stowed across the main hatch, was missing. Inside, the ship held about 3.5 feet of water in her hold, notable but not catastrophic for a vessel of her size. A makeshift sounding rod used to measure the water was found abandoned on deck. The ship's daily log was recovered from the mate's cabin, with the last entry dated 8 a.m. on November 25th, 9 days before the discovery. That entry placed the Mary Celeste near Santa Maria Island in the Azores, nearly 400 nautical miles from where the de Gracia found her. Devoe observed that the interior cabins were wet and disordered, water having entered through doorways and skylights, but otherwise, the rooms appeared reasonably well kept. Personal items were scattered in Captain Briggs' cabin, including the sheathed sword under the bed. However, most of the ship's papers and the captain's navigational instruments were missing. The galley equipment was neatly stowed, and there was no food being prepared, but stores contained ample provisions. No signs of fire, violence, or struggle were evident. All indications pointed to an orderly, if sudden, abandonment, likely by means of the missing lifeboat. With these findings, Captain Morehouse made the decision to make the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, over 600 nautical miles away, to claim salvage rights. Maritime law entitles salvors to a significant portion of a vessel's value, depending on the hazard faced during salvage. To manage 2 ships, Morehouse split his crew, assigning Devoe and 2 able seamen to sail the Mary Celeste, while he and 4 others remained aboard the de Gracia. The journey was slow but uneventful under relatively calm weather. The de Gracia arrived in Gibraltar on December 12th, the Mary Celeste following the next day. On arrival, the Mary Celeste was impounded by the Vice Admiralty Court for salvage hearings, which began on December 17, 1872. The hearings were overseen by Frederick Solly Flood, Attorney General of Gibraltar, known for his rigid and uncompromising nature. Flood was convinced from the testimonies of Devoe and Wright that foul play had occurred. Reports from newspapers such as the New York Shipping and Commercial List echoed this belief, suggesting that alcohol was at the root of the mystery. An official examination of the ship where surveyor John Austin revealed suspicious marks, cuts on either side of the bow, possibly made by a sharp instrument, stains on the ship's rails that might have been blood. The captain's sword showed possible traces of blood as well. Austin concluded the ship had not encountered heavy weather. A vial of sewing machine oil found upright suggested the vessel had remained relatively stable. However, later analysis showed the supposed bloodstains were not blood. Additionally, a report from Captain Sheffield of the US Navy argued the bow marks were natural sea damage rather than man-made. These findings weakened Flood's theory of mutiny or murder. Despite this, Flood remained convinced Morehouse and his crew were hiding something. He suspected the Mary Celeste had been abandoned farther east than recorded, and that the logbook had been docked to conceal the truth. During the hearings, James Winchester, one of the ship's part owners, arrived in Gibraltar and faced accusations from Flood that he might have conspired in some plot involving Briggs and the crew. Winchester vehemently defended Briggs's character, insisting the captain would never have abandoned the ship without good cause. Ultimately, no conclusive evidence of wrongdoing, the court released the Mary Celeste on February 25, 1873. He sailed to Genoa under Captain George Blatchford with a new crew. The salvage award to Morehouse and his men was far lower than expected, just 1/5 of the combined value of the ship and cargo. Chief Justice Sir James Cochrane harshly criticised Morehouse's decision to send part of the crew under Devoe to deliver the cargo, suggesting it compromised the salvage effort. This tone cast a shadow of suspicion over the gracious crew that persists in popular imagination to this day. The hearing's inconclusive results only deepened the mystery, fueling endless speculation about what truly happened to the Mary Celeste's captain, crew, and passengers. Mary Celeste drifted alone in the Atlantic, a ghost ship with no one aboard to explain its eerie silence. What happened to Captain Briggs, his family, and the crew? The mystery has fascinated investigators, writers, and sailors for nearly 150 years. While many theories have been proposed, none have fully unraveled the enigma. The truth may lie somewhere between nature's fury, human fear, and unforeseeable tragedy. One prevailing line of thought is that the ship's abandonment was prompted by a sudden natural event, an unpredictable force of the sea so alarming that it compelled even a seasoned captain to make the drastic decision to evacuate. The Atlantic Ocean, after all, is known for its volatile moods. Sailors have long respected the power of rogue waves, massive, solitary walls of water that rise unexpectedly, towering over the ocean's surface. Such a wave may have crashed over the Mary Celeste, drenching the deck, damaging rigging, or sweeping crew members overboard. The shock alone could have sparked panic and a hurried escape in the lifeboat. Yet the condition in which the Mary Celeste was found challenges this scenario. The ship was still seaworthy, sails only partly damaged, and the hull intact. If a rogue wave had caused such destruction, one might expect more evidence of struggle or damage. Furthermore, no bodies or signs of drowning were discovered, a detail that makes the rogue wave theory plausible but incomplete. Another natural phenomenon often cited is a sudden strike of a waterspout, a swirling vortex of air and water that can tear sails to shreds and whip the ocean into a frenzy. Imagine the terror if such a twisting column of wind and spray descended upon the ship without warning. The rigging could have shredded, and the crew, fearing the vessel's imminent destruction, might have taken to the lifeboat for safety. However, waterspouts, while intense, usually pass quite quickly, often lasting mere minutes. Professional crew would likely have weathered the storm on board, especially if it were brief and the ship remained stable afterwards. Moreover, no weather logs or crew testimonies indicated any such phenomenon, and there was little physical evidence to confirm a waterspout's involvement. Sudden storms, too, have been blamed for the mystery. The Atlantic's temperament can shift rapidly. A severe squall could have left the crew disorientated, thinking the ship was beyond saving. Yet the weather reports from the voyage do not support the presence of such a storm at a critical time. Sails were found partially set rather than furled tightly against a tempest, and the ship did not exhibit the battered state one would expect after surviving a violent gale. If natural causes fail to fully account for the abandonment, the spectre of foul play inevitably emerges. Theories of piracy and mutiny swirl around the Mary Celeste, fueled by centuries of maritime dangers and human treachery at sea. Pirates operating off the Moroccan coast were a real threat during this era. Such an attack would almost certainly have left signs: missing cargo, stolen valuables, bloodshed, destroyed personal belongings. Yet the alcohol cargo remained intact, the crew's possessions undisturbed. No wounds or signs of violence marred the ship. Mutiny, the overthrow of a captain by his crew, wrecked many vessels in history. Still, Mary Celeste's crew were described as peaceable and first-class sailors, handpicked by Briggs himself. There is no indication of discord or dissent, nor any evidence that a violent upheaval had taken place. The orderly condition of the ship's interiors argues against a chaotic mutiny. Some even entertain the idea of insurance fraud, conspiracy involving Captain Briggs, the ship's owners, or even Captain Morehouse on the Gracia. Mary Celeste was heavily insured, tempting some to speculate that disappearance was a deliberate ploy to collect salvage fees or insurance payouts. However, no evidence has ever surfaced to connect the key players in such a scheme. In fact, mysterious abandonment drew unwanted scrutiny and suspicion, hardly the result of a well-planned fraud. One of the more significant theories, which is scientifically grounded, involves the cargo itself. The ship carried 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, some of which were leaking and could have emitted flammable vapors. These fumes are hazardous, could have ignited or caused the crew to fear an imminent explosion. Indeed, the ship's log records occasional rumblings and small explosions from the hold. Such sounds are consistent with alcohol vapors building pressure and releasing gas pockets. An accidental ignition could have caused a sudden blast strong enough to frighten the crew into abandoning ship, but not strong enough to leave visible burn marks. Recent experiments simulating this exact scenario demonstrated that an explosion in the hold would produce a pressure wave and bursts of flame without leaving soot or scorch marks. In their haste, the crew might have fled with only what they could carry, leaving the Mary Celeste intact. Yet, this theory is complicated by the fact that the cargo was found largely undamaged, and no fire scars or explosion damage marred the vessel. Moreover, abandoning navigational instruments and personal possessions seems inconsistent with a reasoned evacuation. Other theories stretch into less tangible realms. Some have suggested ergot poisoning, a condition caused by a fungus growing on stored grain, which can induce hallucinations and irrational behavior. While this could explain panic or madness, there is no evidence the Mary Celeste carried such contaminated provisions, nor reports of any illness aboard. A more technical hypothesis proposes that faulty equipment might have misled Captain Briggs. A malfunctioning chronometer could have disrupted navigation, while a clogged bilge pump and a faulty sounding rod may have falsely indicated rising water in the hold. Fearful that the ship was taking on water, Briggs could have ordered evacuation as a precaution. Supporting this idea is the abandoned sounding rod found on deck, suggesting the crew had tried to assess the flooding. Still, why abandon a seaworthy ship with no evident catastrophic damage remains puzzling. The lifeboat itself offered a tantalizing clue. Briggs' cousin, Oliver Cobb, speculated that the crew's abandonment was only temporary. Perhaps the lifeboat was tethered to the ship whilst the crew investigated a perceived danger, only to be severed by a sudden gust of wind or rough seas. If true, the yawl's occupants would have been left adrift as the Mary Celeste sailed away, never to be rescued. This theory neatly explains the missing lifeboat and orderly state of the ship. It seems unlikely an experienced captain risked the crew in a small boat amid dangerous ocean conditions. Furthermore, the missing life raft was the only one aboard, and abandoning the relatively safe ship to the open ocean would be a desperate measure. At the far edge of speculation lie supernatural explanations, sea monsters, Bermuda Triangle phenomena, and ghostly interventions. Whilst these stories captivate the imagination and occur coloured retellings of the mystery, they lack any scientific support. The sea has always been fertile grounds for myth. The Mary Celeste story demands sober analysis. The enduring mystery of the Mary Celeste invites us to weigh every possibility, from the might of nature to human frailty and fear. Each theory shines a light on part of the puzzle but fails to illuminate the full picture. Was it a rogue wave or a mysterious explosion? Panicked evacuation prompted by false alarms? Or something even more obscure? In the end, Mary Celeste reminds us that the sea holds secrets beyond our grasp. Some mysteries may remain forever adrift in the ocean's vast expanse. The story of the Mary Celeste continues to captivate and confound as it strikes at the heart of one of humanity's oldest fascinations, the ocean and its boundless mysteries. Unlike many shipwrecks where the narrative is clear, storms, battles, or mechanical failures, this ship was found intact, seemingly in good order, yet completely deserted. The fate of Captain Benjamin Briggs, his family, and the crew remains an unresolved question that defies conventional explanation, making the Mary Celeste not just a historical curiosity, but a profound symbol of the limits of human understanding. When the Mary Celeste was discovered drifting in the Atlantic on that cold December day in 1872, the facts seemed straightforward on the surface. The ship was seaworthy, rigging damaged but functional, cargo intact, and provisions sufficient for the voyage. Yet the lifeboat was missing. The crew was nowhere to be found. The ship's log ended 9 days earlier. No distress signals or signs of violence were evident. These contradictions led to a host of investigations, theories, and wild speculation. But what truly happened on board remains elusive. One of the core reasons this mystery endures is that it resists closure. Humans have an instinctual need to understand, create narratives where uncertainty exists. We are storytellers by nature, and the Mary Celeste offers a story with a puzzling gap. An unresolved ending invites endless theorizing. The lack of conclusive evidence has opened the door for both plausible and fantastical explanations, allowing each generation to revisit the mystery with fresh eyes and contemporary perspectives. Scientific and historical investigations have helped narrow the field of possibilities and have failed to produce definitive answers. Natural phenomena such as rogue waves, waterspouts, or sudden violent storms are among the most reasonable explanations. The ocean can unleash sudden overwhelming forces that might have frightened the crew into abandoning ship, fearing it was sinking or about to explode. The missing lifeboat and damage to the rigging would be explained by a sudden evacuation prompted by perceived imminent danger. The experiments showing that an explosion of alcohol fumes might produce a powerful pressure wave without leaving burn marks lend credence to the theory that the crew fled in panic from a potentially deadly but invisible threat. Yet, these natural theories, whilst compelling, also carry significant challenges. Why, if the ship was truly in danger, would the crew leave behind valuable navigational instruments, personal possessions, and sufficient provisions? Why was the vessel found still capable of sailing, partially under sail and with no major hull damage? These questions complicate straightforward natural disaster narratives and suggest a more complex human element in the decision to abandon ship. Foul play theories, including piracy, mutiny, or conspiracy, were investigated seriously during the salvage hearings in Gibraltar and by later historians. However, the absence of missing cargo or valuables and the lack of evidence of violence or struggle weaken these claims. Speculation that the crew or captain was involved in insurance fraud, or that the salvaging crew conspired to kill and loot the Mary Celeste, is equally unsubstantiated. While such narratives are dramatically appealing, they fail under scrutiny and are often more reflective of 19th century sensationalism than fact. Paranormal explanations and tales of sea monsters or curses, while colourful, remain firmly in the realm of myth and legend. These stories illustrate how the human mind seeks patterns and meaning even in chaos, often turning to supernatural and rational explanations fall short. Mary Celeste's enigmatic fate fits perfectly into folklore because it embodies the unknown, a silent, haunting symbol of the ocean's vast power over human lives. The cultural impact of Mary Celeste also contributes to its lasting legacy. It has become an archetype of the ghost ship, a metaphor of mystery and vanished possibility. Its tale resonates beyond maritime history, appearing in literature, film, and television, where it often serves as a canvas for exploring themes of isolation, fear, and the limits of human control. The ship's story taps into universal anxieties about abandonment and disappearance, making it relevant even to audiences far removed from the Atlantic Ocean. Moreover, the mystery persists because it resists definitive scientific closure. Unlike many historical enigmas eventually solved by evidence or discovery, the Mary Celeste remains elusive, partly because the ocean itself conceals so much. The ocean's depths hold countless secrets, and many wrecks and disappearances are never fully explained. Mary Celeste's story reminds us that despite advances in technology and investigation, nature and fate can still defy human understanding. In reflecting on the Mary Celeste, one is reminded that the sea is a domain where human life is fragile, and even the most experienced captains are vulnerable to forces beyond control. Captain Briggs was a skilled and devout man, and his careful selection of crew and preparation suggest a competent and cautious approach. The abrupt and total disappearance of his entire company underscores how quickly calm and order can give way to chaos and tragedy in the maritime world. Ultimately, the Mary Celeste serves as a haunting symbol of human vulnerability, mystery, and the unknowable. It invites us to imagine what might have driven a seasoned captain and his crew to abandon a perfectly good ship in the middle of the ocean, never to be seen again. Was it fear, a misjudgment under pressure, or something stranger still? The enduring fascination with the Mary Celeste lies not only in the facts of the case, but in the profound questions it raises about fate, courage, and the limits of knowledge. It's a story that embodies the tension between human mastery and nature's indifference, a tale of disappearance, continues to challenge and to inspire. As long as the ocean stretches beyond the horizon, and as long as a human curiosity endures, Mary Celeste will remain a beacon of mystery, a ghost ship sailing forever in the currents of history and imagination, inviting us to ponder the depths, not only of the sea, but of human uncertainty itself. So what do you think happened to the Mary Celeste? Was it bad weather, piracy, or something else? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what we do here, don't forget to subscribe, click the like button. And most importantly, remember, keep listening for the echoes.